Let's talk about it, folks. Chris Paul. I think it needs to be said. Let's go. So Chris Paul is the subject of today's episode. It's kind of like something I don't know. I might do a kind of like a continuing series about this. I like to call media's sacred cows. NBA in the NBA is quite a few of them. Where the media never wants to say bad about particular players. They're very sensitive of being critical of certain players, and I think one of the ones that they're very sensitive to is Chris Paul. And after this week, seeing what we saw, I think the idea of like putting him on the upper echelon, just automatically assuming he's the best point guard in the league without any question, has come into question. That's just my opinion. I've always been a bit skeptical about it, but hey, it's kind of like trying to shout amongst a crowd or a mob. So I just I just laid back, saw what was going on. But to me, he's a great player. Don't get me wrong. He's an all-star player, star player. But to put him on a pedestal as if he's the next coming of Magic Johnson or Isaiah Thomas, I never saw it. Now, what spurred this episode or this conversation today is I put it up on Facebook mentioning how I don't want to hear anyone tell me that Chris Paul's the next coming of anybody after what I saw after Game 5 of the Clippers Thunder series, where pretty much we watched a top player meltdown like in epic proportion. And folks want to compare it to Isaiah Thomas throwing the ball with Larry Bird, and even Magic Johnson throwing away the ball in this case. I think it was Game 7 against the Celtics. True, those were errors too. I think the difference between what I saw there versus this scenario, and you could take other ones in this case as well too, was among other top point guards, was the comedy of errors in this case that we saw going down this stretch of Game 5. I'll get to Game 6 in a second, but quickly on Game 5. The fact that everyone talks about what happened at the end of the game with the fouls and the call that wasn't called. The call was horrible. I agree with Doc. It was a horrible call. But you shouldn't have to put yourself in that position in the first place if your top line point guard was doing what he's supposed to do. The fact that they were milking the clock, which is the part a lot of people haven't discussed, for about a good 4 or 5 possessions before we got to that point. I think we're after Chris Paul hit a jumper by the free throw extended that put him up 7 with about 50 seconds left or 49 seconds left. They had 3 or 4 possessions where either Paul or Crawford jacking up some 25-foot three-point shot with almost no time on the shot clock. Now, my mindset, I'm no top-line player or anything like that, but when, growing up, you go to the little basketball camps, I played, point guard and stuff like that, but the basic teachings they told you was protect the ball and run your plays, run your offense. That was horrible. I'm pretty sure Doc did not go in the huddle with about 3 minutes left and say, you know what, let's milk the clock. He even made mention of it in his post-game conference about them milking the clock, which I think, it creates an atmosphere of playing defensive. It's almost in this case, if you see hockey teams on their back on their heels just dumping the puck out. That spells trouble when that happens, in hockey. And the same thing is the basketball equivalent of letting the air out the ball, and they fell right into that trap. And I'm thinking, if you're Chris Paul, a guy as aggressive as he is, you cannot let that happen. That's the first thing. Second thing, when the error happened where he thought he was going to get fouled and decided to do the stupid Chris Paul thing that he does all the time, throw up the ball from like 40 feet, think he's going to get 3 shots. Dude, they're not calling that. Stop doing it. And this time it came back to bite you, and you know what? Stop doing that. The problem, that play to me encapsulates everything about Chris Paul. Unfortunately, from the negative standpoint, I think he has a habit in this case thinking he's the smartest guy on the court, and a lot of times he is. So there's a good reason for him to think this way. But sometimes you could be a little too clever for your own good, and I think this is one of these circumstances. It's one of these great examples and great contrast between he and Westbrook, because while he plays the cerebral game, Westbrook plays the instinctive game. And this is one of the times where, in this case, instincts beat out cerebral side of things, where Westbrook wasn't looking to foul, which would have been the cerebral thing to do to stop the clock. Westbrook was like, I'm looking to get a steal, because my instinct feels like I can pick this ball off of him. And this time, in this case, Westbrook's instincts were correct. because the call did not go the way you thought of. The refs weren't going to give you any bailout call. If you just taken and accepted the foul, the dude's like an 85% or 80% free throw shooter. Go to the line, knock down your 2 shots. Stop trying to get cute when the game's on the line. That's the part of all the things, I think that is the one infuriated me the most. Even more so than the 3 shot, giving the 3 shots, free throw shots to Westbrook on the 3-point line, 3-point shot, which to me was another horrible thing he did. And the fact that this is one of the things where you shake your head because the media guys love to kind of jump on both sides of the fence. When he did it against Steph Curry in the previous round, it was a stupid play then too, but he got away with it when he pushed on his hip. You just don't mess with how these playoffs are being run and seeing so many 4-point plays and guys getting 3 shots for fouls. Dude, it's like a protective bubble around the arc. You don't want to mess around with that. If Westbrook had hit the 3 with 7 seconds, mind you, there was not a good shot by Westbrook. So once again, there's the instincts backfire on Westbrook. When in this case, getting too cute by half by Chris Paul trying to get up into space instead of backing off. If Westbrook could pull off that shot, more power to him. That still left you with 7 seconds left to get a good shot to win the game. Calm down. But once again, meltdown mode was happening with Chris Paul, and his emotions were getting the better of him. Which is one of the things, the reason why I've always been a little bit, down Chris Paul from that standpoint. Because, hey, I'm an ACC fan, and ACC fans know in this case, this dude was a hothead in college. People seem to forget the suspension, which I'm always shocked that never seems to come up in his history. In this case, LeBron does this decision and gives some money to charity, and they never let LeBron live that down. This dude, he kicked a guy in his crotch, I think it was, or something like that. And he was suspended for like 8-10 games for the rest of the season, the ACC season. And that doesn't even seem to get mentioned anymore, Chris Paul. It's like some other dude did that. So, he's always been a bit of a suspect player when it comes to, when it comes to dirtiness. I ain't got no problem with that. I ain't gonna lie, because I like players in this case that were suspect dudes too when it came to that. I know guys that from a player standpoint, so I'm not even holding that against them. But it's just the emotions that you saw and the meltdown and just all the things in this case that most times he uses the positive, just going down the drain and the negative in this case. And the third one, my goodness. Now you got the 6 seconds left or 5 seconds left in the game. Guy, you hit the shot when they put you up 7 with 49 seconds, free throw extended. That's your pet shot. Anyone who watches Chris Paul knows he hits that shot in his sleep. You can actually see him hesitating at that point, like flinching, and then going further inside. Why are you doing that? Take the shot. It was your shot to take. So once again, poor judgment again. And then to find out in the last, he had about 1.5 to 2 seconds, the foul Ibaka, which he never did either, to see if he could get one more shot at it. So meltdown mode all across the board in Game 5. He owned it. Props to him. He had to own it. He had no choice. He blew it. And I pretty much thought at that point the series I think the series could have been done. And in this case, I was correct, because when you came back in Game 6, I make this term, I refer to this term with my friends all the time. I call Revlon guys. Guys in this case, why I call them Revlon? Guys that put up stats that are cosmetic stats. They look great in a box. All the analytics geeks, run around the place saying, oh, he's got this PR, he's got this, he's got this usage, this and that. Dude, sometimes Chris Paul is the classic example of an analytics guy versus eye test guy. And it's great. I love the analytics too. They're fun to watch, see the shot charts and everything like that. It gives you a great idea for insights on how to defend players, how to attack players. I'm all for it in the game. I love it. But sometimes you gotta trust your gut and your eyes. And my eyes told me in this case last night watching that game, he was getting numbers in this case here, but there's nothing that he was doing to put an imprint on the game. It's throughout this whole series that after you get past Game 1 where you had a great shooting exhibition, once Westbrook got into him, to be quite honest with you, he might have been getting numbers, but they weren't fearing him. Yeah, not once did I remember hearing Oklahoma City, Oklahoma City put a double team to trap him pretty much. Anything in this case here to get the ball in his hands, nothing. They're like, here, go ahead, knock yourself out if you could do something. And for my money, I just saw guys getting points and getting assists and stuff, but nothing was saying, hey, you need to fear me. And in this case, the person who was getting that type of respect was Griffin, where they're doubling, switching matchups, all sorts of stuff to try to get the ball in his hands to make sure he wasn't effective. And a funny thing is, I find that Griffin and Paul is very similar to Durant and Westbrook in this sense. One guy in the team always seems to wear the white hat, the other guy always seems to wear the black hat. And with Durant and Westbrook, it's quite obvious who gets which hat. And when it comes to Clippers, Paul is usually the white hat dude, and it's usually Blake's fault when they lose in this case, that he has to step his game up and this and that, and he's not physical enough and blah, blah, blah this and blah, blah, blah that. He's the black hat guy. Well, in this series, to me, Griffin was the dude. and he played great right down to the final moments till he fouled out. The thing is, even though Paul's numbers to me look great on paper, I did not see anything in there where he was imposing his will on the game. Take his counterpart on the other side, Westbrook, who had an atrocious first half. But you can see in this case in Game 6, once he got going in the second half, he was creating havoc for the Clippers. Getting in the lane, penetrating, for either his own shot or for someone else's shot. The rebounding was spectacular. He was taking drives coast to coast. I mean, like, he was putting pressure on the defense every second. And I think his physicality was wearing down Chris Paul, and it's the reason why I think in this case it's partially due to fatigue for the meltdown in Game 5. And I think even down the stretch in the fourth quarter last night, I can't remember, he had some gaudy stat where he shot like 3 out of 10 or something in the fourth quarter, some stat like that. Don't quote me on it, but I saw it in one of the articles where it was like some crazy stat like that where Paul had shot 3 out of 10 in the fourth quarter last night. He had a couple more turnovers late in the game with the charge and I think another play too, but just poor decision making. And I mean, at this point here, I know all the Paul supporters are going to tell me, oh, he's never had the teams and stuff. Like, you know what? The last couple of years he had a pretty damn good team. He even got the coach he wanted this year after he did not actually verbally say, fire Vinny Del Negro, but essentially he fired Vinny Del Negro. So he got his coach, he got his guy. Griffin and Jordan, who he's railing on for the last couple of years, did their thing. They stepped up their games this year, to different levels that I even think, especially Jordan, I didn't think he could reach. And when push came to shove, the guy who you built all this around to get it done couldn't get it done. 9 years in, guys. 9 years in. I'm sorry. No more excuses. I mean, this dude gets a hall monitor pass. The pass is so much. Like, give me a break. This is LeBron James a few years ago taking a bunch of scrubs to the finals from Cleveland. Like, give me a break. And then we're giving pass to Chris Paul, who's got an all-star player, potentially a Hall of Fame player when he's done in Griffin. The sixth man of the year, wins almost every year you can stamp with Crawford. A good solid two-man, in this case in Redick. Give me a break. I mean, spare me. Jordan, one of the best defensive centers in the league. Come on. At some point, it's on him. I'm sorry. Dude is not getting it done. So I don't want to hear any more talk about best point guard in the league. Because right now, Westbrook pretty much had his, handing him his you-know-what and his ass last few times they played. Last few series. Time and time again. I'm sorry. I mean, true, Westbrook is not perfect in this case here, but when push comes to shove, I'll take Westbrook on my team any day of the week. Chris Paul to me is a guy in this case that puts up sweet stats, and he's all analytical with it and everything like that. But he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room all the time, and I think that's why some people get kind of get turned off by him. But to me, it's like, what? At some point, it's on you. I don't want to hear any excuse about anybody else. So that's my point. Chris Paul bashers, you could come, and Chris Paul lovers, you could come bash me wherever. Comments you can put down below. You can hit me up on Facebook with it, whatever the case may be. I mean, I'm just saying, I'm just keeping it real. Right now, I got to put him in the Revlon category, folks. He's right there. Get the makeup done with Halle Berry and everybody else. Revlon dude. Anyways, until next time, guys, we'll, peace, and we'll talk later on who knows what might come down the pike by next week. But enjoy yourself. Check me out on Facebook. Check me out on YouTube here. And we're on Twitter at Beyond Locker Room. That's Locker Room RM. Beyond Locker RM. And, and hear what I have to say. And I look forward to speaking to you next week. Peace.